Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our 31st webinar in the IrBEA's series, which we've been running for almost 2 years now at this stage. So this morning's topic, we're going to look at Ireland's forestry resource. There's been a lot of work done over the last couple of years to relook at where we're going with forestry. There's a public consultation out at the moment on the topic. And today we're going to take an in-depth look at the resources that are there and the ongoing use of that material in a sustainable fashion. We have, as you're most likely familiar with the association itself, we were established in 1999, basically as a voice for the bioenergy industry. So we cover all areas such as biofuels, energy crops, biochar, biofuels, and the biogas sector. And we run various projects through that to, again, to transfer knowledge, to lobby, and also to just bring a general public awareness to the whole area. Obviously, it's very topical at the moment, given the energy crisis we have as it stands, but also in the longer term and the more important climate crisis that we're also facing. The use of bioenergy is a major role to play in all that. Our webinar series this is our 31st episode of it. So as you can see, we've covered a vast range of topics through that. They're all available on our YouTube channel if you want to go and have a look at those recordings. We've covered everything, going back to those topics I discussed earlier, everything from biochar, biogas, transport fuels, wood fuels for industrial, for housing, and a lot of the criteria on the sustainability of those materials as well. So if you want to have a look back at any of those webinars, they're all on our YouTube channel. So the next channel or next webinar will be on in 2 weeks' time. So the details of that will be published in the coming days. But if there is any topics you would like to see covered in the webinar series, do feel free to contact ourselves, myself or my colleague Teresa or Sean, and we can look at covering those topics as well. So if there is something you do feel needs to be covered within the series, do feel free to contact ourselves. In terms of today, my name is Nolan Gavigan. I'm a technical executive with the association. I've been with the association about 12 years now. Teresa is our PR and comms executive. She will be giving us a presentation. We've just launched a new animation for the WFQA. Teresa has been intimately involved in creating that. And then we will have our guest speaker today, which is Fergus Moore, who is with the Department of Agriculture. After that, we'll have a discussion over the topics raised, and we will go through any questions that you have. You will see the question tab at the bottom of your screen. So if you do have any questions you want to put in writing, put them through there and we will be able to see them, and we'll put them through to our speakers. So our guest speaker, as I said, is Fergus Moore. He's a senior inspector with the Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine. He heads up the forest sector division, and he's assigned responsibilities to include the development of the forest sector, the National Forest Inventory, which we're going to be discussing today, the genetic resources, and the contribution of forests to climate change. All topics that are very relevant today, and in the National Vision consultation that's ongoing at the moment. They're all topics that they are actively asking the public to respond to. So in terms of our first part today, the first person I want to introduce is Teresa Bryan, who's on screen. Teresa is, for those who don't know, she is our communications manager. She is right throughout the webinar series. She is behind the scenes. She is creating the webinars. She is managing all the electronic aspects of it, as well as organizing speakers, and we couldn't run this series without her. I'm not sure, Teresa, if you've been up front before within the series, but it's great to see you on screen.
Right. Good morning, everybody. So just to run through the WFQA briefly, the WFQA started in 2009, so it's been going a while now. We have over 30 suppliers across the country, as you can see the map there. We try and cover all areas so that everybody in the country has a supplier somewhere. We cover, people are certified in wood chip, wood pellets, firewood and wood briquettes. All the suppliers are certified under ISO 17225, and these suppliers are audited every year by us so that the standards continue to be high and your fuel is always of a high quality. We'd like to acknowledge the Department of Agriculture in supporting this scheme. We couldn't have done it without them. And it's ongoing with right up to today, and with Fergus giving us support today with the help with the animation, and we'd just like to acknowledge that. So if you Next screen there, please, Noel. Yeah, and so just a little bit about the animation. It showcases the role of wood fuel in sustainable forest management, the role of the WFQA in particular in the development of the wood fuel in the wood fuel sector. And we'd just like to acknowledge both the department, Noel, Stephen McCormack, Eugene Henrik, Sean Finan, our CEO, in the development of this animation. It was a team effort, and also to Paul Lavoie, who was the graphics team. It's Lavoie Communications, the graphics team behind the animation. I suppose the thing I'd like to say about this, when we were brainstorming this animation, and we talked about a storyboard, our vision was to present a kind of holistic view of the working forest, to see the forest as a value for construction and energy, of course, but also as an environment rich in biodiversity. It's recreational value for exercise and well-being, and also, you know, this asset alone came into sharp focus through the pandemic. So within that context of the working forest, the animation goes in to talk about, obviously, the sustainable role of wood fuel, which is our area, but we wanted to talk about it in the context of all the resources that forestry gives islands. So we hope you enjoy this 3-minute animation, and I hope you pick up on some of the themes that I've mentioned here. So if I could just share the screen there, Noel.
Certainly.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go, just kind of, excuse me for a second. I'm just going to stop sharing there for a second.
Okay. Just what Teresa just finding that in terms of the animation itself, again, it's an effort by ourselves to show, as Teresa explaining, the sustainability of the supply of material and the importance of adding that aspect to it. And it is something that comes up quite a lot if in the public consultation. I'll talk to Fergus about that in a moment. But the public consultation that's open at the moment does value all of I think it's 5 pillars that are described there. And as Teresa points out, during the pandemic, it is something that one of those, the public good, has been largely, we've suddenly seen the true value of the public good of having those forest facilities near us, right around the country. So, Teresa, you okay there?
Yes, just bear with me 1 second.
Okay.
I'm going to just share again. Okay, there we go. Right, here we go.
No, excellent. Thanks very much for that, Teresa. I assume that's been shared out on social media today. Is that available for anyone who wants to look at it again? Sorry, you're on mute there, Teresa. Fergus, maybe we'll, Teresa, just an issue there with technical, so maybe we can come back to Teresa on the video in a minute. Just to introduce Fergus, who has Fergus, as I said earlier, he's head of the division within the Department of Agriculture. So Fergus, very welcome to the webinar. You have a presentation just see you putting up on screen there. So do you want to give a quick intro to yourself and to what this is about?
That's great. Thanks very much, Nolan. Thanks for IrBEA for inviting me here today to discuss, I suppose, the forest resource that we have, and it's also a little bit about our forest strategy. And I suppose just firstly to say, fantastic video there, which really in 3 minutes, you really sum up the whole forest life cycle. So certainly I can see that video being shared quite a bit over the course of the next number of years. Really excellent to see that. And it's certainly very important to see those sort of initiatives taking place. Myself, yeah, I'm Fergus Moore, head of division in the Forest Sector Development division in Johnson Castle. And what we're going to do today really is just to give you a little bit of a brief overview of the forest resource we have. And as you're aware, probably the Coalford Council have published a new updated forest forecast in relation to our forest estate, which I think would be quite important to your members to see exactly where the resource is and where it's coming from. I suppose the presentation today, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of forestry in Ireland. As I said, talk a little bit about the Coalford updated All-Ireland roundwood forecast, which goes from 2021 out to 2040, and also about our Irish forest strategy, which we're currently developing. And as you know, we have a consultation exercise currently ongoing, which closes today at 12 o'clock midnight. So I know some of your members already submitted submissions, but certainly there's plenty of time between now and the end of today to submit any observations you may have. I suppose really just to kind of give you a very, very brief overview, and some of your members will probably be aware of this, but just for people who don't, forestry is quite a success story really over the last 100 years. We've really put in place a fantastic forest resource that was only 1% in 1900. We've actually managed to grow that to 11% today, with over 23,500 individual forest owners, which have planted over 300,000 hectares. So I think it's important to acknowledge that we've done a fantastic job in the last, I suppose, 100 years in getting to 11%. We're still quite low by European standards, but certainly we've done a lot in the last 100 years, and certainly our vision for the forest strategy is to try and grow that estate further. The harvest itself is about 4 million cubic meters, and that's growing, and I'll talk a bit about that later on as we go through the forecast of what's predicted. And again, from a carbon sequestration point of view, we're putting about 4 million tons of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, and again, that's quite important. And again, from our forest estate, we've lots of recreational visits which are taking place on the public estate on the Quilcha Forest. So again, quite an important resource we've actually generated. I suppose, really people might ask about the forests and how do we know how much forest cover we have? Well, in the Department of Agriculture, we've got a dedicated forest inventory unit that gathers information on our forest resource about every 5 years. We're currently in the process of completing a survey of our forests, which we'll be hopefully publishing a revised inventory towards the end of probably middle of next year. But the last inventory we took was back in 2017. And that again, we've had about 6 team members going around the country taking measurements in over about 2,000 different individual forest plots. And again, collecting a whole range of information on species, soil types, plant health, looking at the volume of those particular trees. And again, all that information that we collect every 5 years goes into predicting and estimating the amount of carbon as well that is sequestered from the atmosphere. So again, forest inventory is very, very important. And again, the inventory we carry out is done to a high scientific standard, it's peer reviewed, and again, very robust. I suppose just to give you a quick snapshot really of the forest resource we have, and I suppose this leads into, the opportunities that this forest resource actually presents itself to ourselves in developing a vision for the next, 40, 50 years. Sitka spruce is our dominant species in our forest estate, roughly about 44–45% of the stocked area. Again, followed by other species of Norway spruce, Scots pine, and again our broadleaf forests. You know, we have oak representing a smaller amount, but again quite important from a biodiversity point of view. And overall, I suppose 70% of our estate is conifers and about 30% broadleaves on the total area. So that's really the breakdown where it goes. So certainly a lot of resource there, and again we're looking trying to diversify that. You know, in the years ahead, we obviously got a large amount of broadleaves being planted in the last number of years. Last year our program was nearly 40% broadleaves, and again that's going to help to diversify our entire forest resource that we have. But again, you know, coniferous species, Sitka spruce, quite an important species, as you know, for the development of our forest sector. And again, lots of harvested wood products, lots of carbon stored in those timber products as well. So all our species together are important. And I think our forest inventory itself recorded, I think, over 53 species that are present within our forest estate that we're collecting information on. So again, excellent resource. I suppose really just to put in context really, today, you know, as I said, we've done an awful lot in the last 100 years, but if you have to go back to nearly over 350 years to have roughly the same level of forest cover that we have today. So, you know, from 1650 onwards, we're really hovering at 2% forest cover, which is quite low. And again, obviously in 1900, the founding of the state, a lot of, I suppose, good policies were put in place over the last 100 years, and a lot of successive governments, and I suppose a lot of forest workers that have come and gone and have been involved in really putting that forest resource that we have there today, 11% of forest cover. And again, you can see that graph is quite steep. And I know we've lots of licensing issues at the moment, and we're, you know, failing to meet our existing forest targets on afforestation. But I think it's quite important to show that, you know, forestry is a long game, and, you know, we will get those issues resolved shortly, and certainly will reverse the trend, and we'll hopefully see an increase in our afforestation levels that we've seen in the past. And again, just to put in context, this is a graph which we have, and we update this graph every year. And as you can see, you know, a lot of public planting took place in the 1950s and 1960s, and then obviously private forestry took over in the 1980s with the advent of CAP and very generous grant aid that was put in place. And again, with over 3 billion euros worth of grant aid and investment, and also forest owners getting involved with that, we've seen a marked increase in our forest cover by nearly 300,000 hectares. And again, this is quite important in relation to our inventory and our forecast. This private estate now is really coming to fruition. We're in a state of transition that, you know, these forests are now beginning to really pump out volume in the next number of years ahead. And certainly that's what we're seeing in our forecast that we've done. I suppose just to put in context really regarding our forecast, the Cofer Council is the platform which the department has, which gives the department and the minister advice on a whole range of different issues in relation to forestry. The Cofer Council, chaired by Eugene Hendrick, is basically a multi-stakeholder platform where lots of organizations come together to bring the resources to the table to try and you know, progress a lot of different policy areas, whereas climate change, forest genetic resources, ecosystem services, or timber forecasting. So I suppose the forecast itself was done by the Wood Mobilization Group, and the forecast is done roughly every 5 years, and the Cofer Council is the body that's been doing these forecasts for a good many years. And I suppose, why do we have a forecast? Well, a forecast is very important for, you know, it's an agreed methodology and approach for estimating the future roundwood availability that we have projected from our forests. It also facilitates the mobilization of state and private forest resources. It allows us to anticipate regarding the level of grant aid and the level of forest road construction we have to do, and also allows the forest sector itself to actually, you know, put in place resources to try and, you know, materialize and capitalize on those opportunities. The forecast itself is important for policy decisions, and also very important for the forest and wood energy sector to provide accurate forecasts to assess the potential availability of the roundwood and wood fibre that's there, and it helps to underpin future investment in timber processing and wood energy. And I would say the forecast, it's quite elastic really. It's a projected forecast, and it can increase or decrease depending on demand. But what it does is it gives a baseline of the potential of the forest to to produce timber over the next 10, 15 years. But certainly, you know, there'll be some case whereby forest owners will either thin a bit earlier, or they may do more thinnings than maybe the forecast is projected. So it's quite elastic, and again, it can be revised as the years go ahead. I suppose really just to give you a bit of the composition, these forecasts, as I say, it was done by a collaborative group of individuals on a subgroup of the Cofer Council, the Wood Mobilisation Group. And this particular iteration of the forecast was chaired by Patrick Murray from Murray Sawmill, along with DAFM, ourselves, Quilcha, IFA, Chagas, Northern Ireland Forest Service, we had the Irish Timber Growers Association, and we had VION. The previous forecast was chaired by Mike Lennon from Glennon Sawmill. So again, it's a very collaborative approach, and what this forecast does is it allows people to see exactly under the bonnet how the forecast is done, and you can see it's quite scientific in the way it's compiled. We also bring in additional expertise, and DAFM provides some funding for this, and we have Silva Analytics, we have Driven Marketing, we have the ICON Group, we have Tree Metrics involved in some very high level remote sensing work as well, and bringing their expertise in basic data modeling to basically improve the forecast. The actual report itself was written by and compiled by Henry Phillips, Miles McDonough, Michael Fairgrave, and Lee Malone, Tara Sweeney, and John Redmond from the department. So again, as you can see, a lot of individuals are involved in this. This is a collaborative effort. It's not a department working on its own. It's really bringing expertise to the table to provide this forecast. And again, if you're interested in finding out all the details of how it was done, we've got a very, very good publication, and all these publications are available for download on the department's website. So again, the All-Ireland Groundwood Production Forecast Methodology. And again, I'd encourage you all who's interested in seeing how a forecast is done to read this document. It's really good, and it gives you all the information that's there. And certainly, I won't go into it in much detail today, but certainly feel free to have a look at that in your leisure, in your own time. I suppose really just to cut to the chase really regarding our forecast, and again, you know, the forecast which is available online, loads of information and there's loads of tables. I don't intend to go into that in much detail today, but just really to give you the high level view of where our timber forecast is going. Over the last, I suppose, 40, 50 years, Quilcha being the main sort of forest owner in the country and the main organisation that was delivering timber, was really responsible for the vast majority of the timber you would have seen coming to the sawmills. So about 2.5 million cubic meters or thereabouts has been produced by Quilcha over the last number of years. And that sort of is more or less what's projected really out to 2040. That the Quilcha estate is fairly flatlined in relation to its timber production. Obviously, the forests that are felled or replanted, at the moment, they're not increasing their forest area, but that may change with their new vision. But certainly at the moment, the area that they have of 440,000 hectares, the production is fairly flatlined, which is a fantastic, I suppose, resource that is providing, I suppose, continuity of supply over the last number of years. But I suppose the real success story really is that massive investment that took place in private forestry back in the 1980s. And really what we're seeing now is a state of transition whereby all those forests that were planted are now having a lot of forest roads being constructed, and this forest resource is beginning to move towards the sawmilling sector. And as you can see on this sort of blue line here, this forest estate is growing quite considerably over the next number of years, to such an extent that this kind of crucial year of 2026, where we'll see for the first time ever that the private harvest is projected to equal the Quilcha harvest and will surpass the Quilcha harvest in the next number of years ahead. And that's quite an important, I suppose, milestone that we've achieved, that the private sector is maturing and those forests are now coming on stream. So what we see as well is, this is an All-Ireland forecast, and I said before, we have Northern Ireland Forest Service involved in producing this forecast. The Northern Ireland Forest Service is also producing timber as well, 300,000 cubic meters or roughly every year, and certainly you know, to 500,000 cubic meters over the next foreseeable future. So again, you know, that's quite important to see that coming through. And again, it all goes into an All-Ireland forecast because our eight large sawmills in the country and all our bioenergy suppliers, we're pulling timber right across the island into all those various markets. So again, this forecast is quite important. And again, you know, just to look at the figures we have, we've had 4.7 million cubic meters projected to come from the island of Ireland. That's going to rise quite steadily over the years. And as I said, 2026 is where the private forecast is projected to be about 0.7 million cubic meters, and the Coillte forecast about 2.5 million cubic meters. So you can see the forecast is nudging ahead on the private side. That will continue to grow up to 4 million cubic meters out to 2040. Again, lots of figures here. I'll encourage you to go into the forecast that's online. It's broken down per county as well, so you'll see the breakdown between Coillte and private at county level. So that's going to be quite important if you're a biomass supplier, or you're an energy user. You can see exactly what the level of material available is in your backyard. So that's quite important. So certainly make sure you have a look at those details. We've also looked at the forecast in relation to the amount of forecast available for wood fibre, for wood energy. And again, you can see, again, we've got considerable volumes of timber coming on stream. Again, about 0.8 million cubic meters of that forecast is going to be available for wood energy. And again, you're talking about downgrade, wood residues and harvesting residues. And again, that's going to increase again quite significantly out to 2040. It's probably a bit down on the previous forecast, and that's I think in the previous forecast we estimated that we would get a lot more harvesting residues from our forest sites, our lop and top and our branch wood. Haven't really seen that come into fruition really in the last number of years. So that's one of the reasons why this level is reduced on previous forecasts. But again, if we see an improvement in the markets, there's certainly potential there for a lot of lop and top to be removed from sites to produce wood energy. So certainly we can watch this space, and certainly there's potential there to grow that market further. One thing I would say is, what we've done is, as in the previous forecast, we've put a spatial element to it. What we've done is we've actually linked the forecast to a mapping browser that allows people to go in, and this is all freely available online. You can go in online. So for example, here I've placed this little red dot just at the corner of Wicklow and Carlow and Kilkenny. And that red dot, I've looked at a radius of 10 kilometers. And again, this is an interactive tool. And when you actually hit the search button on the website, it'll pull out all the forecast information that we've captured at all the forest parcel level. And it'll pull out roughly what the forecast volume projected is out to 2040. And has it broken down into broadies and conifers. So again, this tool is interactive. You can increase the radius of this particular circle. You can place this particular dot anywhere in the country, and it'll pull out a kind of bespoke forecast. So this could be quite important if you're interested in setting up, whether it's a biomass boiler, or you're looking at where is the potential supply of timber that I may get in a local catchment area. And again, this is all important for sustainability as well, that you're trying to pull in timber from local areas. So this tool is being updated, and the 2040 forecast information is now being put into it. So certainly feel free to play online. I've given you the link below there. Go on to our Department of Agriculture website. It's on the COFA website, I believe, as well. And again, this will allow you to basically interactively scroll to any part of the country and pull out a bespoke forecast. As I say, the forecast we've generated is at the county level, but this now allows us to actually look at the forecast at a regional level. And again, in the forecast itself, we use a lot of remote sensing work, a lot of very sort of high level science to try and improve on the accuracy of the forecast. So again, a lot of really good information here. We've looked at the access, we looked at the productivity of various forest parcels, and we've helped to model what a forecast will do. So I suppose maybe as well, before I conclude really just on the forecast side, just to really to highlight yourselves really some of the other initiatives we've done in the department over the last number of years. And we've done quite one recently on an Ireland tree volume calculator. And this is really sort of, again, looking at the information we've collected on our National Forest Inventory. We have an Irish tree volume calculator that allows you to put in the volume, the measurements of your trees, your diameters, and will also calculate the carbon associated above ground and below ground in relation to those particular trees. So again, that's just us in the department using all the information we have to try and push as much of this information as possible out into the public domain, because certainly, it's important that people use this information to basically help them run their business or help them inform their decisions. One thing as well we've done, and I know Henry Phillips was quite important in devising this for us. We've also got a forest service felling decision tool that allows forest owners to make informed decisions in relation to the crops they have growing on their own lands. So what this tool does is it allows you to look at a financial appraisal to basically establish what's the best time for you to fell your forest crop. So this looks at the financial returns by felling it at year, say 30, 35, year 40, and you can run the model and it'll tell you exactly what the best financial time is to fell your crops. Sometimes forest owners may want to fell the crops a little bit earlier, but this tool will actually show you that it's probably more beneficial in some cases to allow your forest to grow on to a particular maybe silvicultural or financial rotation age that can maximize your return. Sometimes, you know, by allowing your forest to grow on for an extra few years, you can considerably increase the financial return you get from your forest if you decide to clear fell at a certain age. So it's then very, very important that you try and get independent advice. But again, this tool gives you a lot of information. One thing on the forecast we found is that the average clear felling age was about 27 years of age, which was, it's still quite young actually. And this tool would show that if you can afford to leave your crops grow a little bit longer, you will actually get more volume and also more financial return by doing that. So again, these tools are important for you to make those informed decisions. And I suppose really just to summarize really where we're at, the forecast really shows that there's a massive increase in supply of about 4.7 million projected on the all Ireland forecast from 2021, rising to 7.9 million cubic meters by 2035, followed by a slight decrease then to 7.6 million cubic meters by 2040. And that forecast includes, say, Northern Ireland. The thinning volume continues probably to decline on previous forecasts, and that now accounts for about 17 million cubic meters over the forecast period, with clear fells obviously looking at about 87% of the total volume that's projected will come from our clear fells. And again, our wood fibre, as I said, goes from 0.8 million cubic meters to 2 million cubic meters by 2035. So again, that's a kind of a snapshot of our forecast where it's at. I would say encourage you all to go online and download those forecasts and go into massive detail and really see the forecast from your own county of where things are going. I suppose, as Nolan has said, really, we're also involved in a forest strategy which we're going to develop over the next number of months. And at the moment, we've got a public consultation exercise ongoing at the moment, which basically we're consulting on a whole wide range of different areas, and we want to get your views and your opinions in relation to the forest we have now and the forest we manage out into the future. We're consulting on our vision, right tree in the right place for the right reasons with the right management. And again, you know, that's quite important. We've over nearly 3,000 submissions so far on that forest strategy consultation exercise which is taking place. We'll also have a deliberative dialogue which will take place towards the end of next month, whereby we will engage with about 99 citizens, similar to a citizen assembly. And again, they'll be asked questions about forestry and a level of ambition and what forest cover that we should try and strive for in the next number of years. So certainly a lot of public consultation is ongoing. So I'd encourage yourselves as IrBEA members to engage in that process. And I'd say you have until 12 o'clock midnight. And I know some of you have already submitted your submissions, but certainly if people haven't and they want to submit a submission on the public consultation, go onto the Department of Agriculture's website and certainly click on the link, and it'll allow you to basically progress the questionnaire. It'll probably take about 20 minutes to fill in. So I'd encourage you all to do that. I suppose our vision, really, we're looking at, you know, I say right tree in the right place for the right reasons, but really, like, from a vision point of view, like, we really do feel that forestry has a significant contribution to make in our landscape for the next 50 years, as it has done in the last 50 years. And again, you know, wood energy is important. We have a stove there in the middle of this infographic. So again, burning sort of wood is from a sustainable forest is quite important. And again, IrBEA have been quite to the forefront of that over the last number of years with the wood fuel quality assurance scheme. And again, you know, burning dry wood at 25% moisture content or lower in a closed stove is a sustainable part of woodland, I suppose, forest management. You know, we need a market for those small diameter material. And again, when you take out those small diameter material from our forests, It allows the remaining forest to grow bigger, and those bigger forest dimensions are very important for harvest of wood products, which are, you know, important for carbon storage. But again, our forests have to be, I suppose, contribute to our environment. We can't be causing damage to our waterways. So again, we have to be cognizant of that and plant trees in the right places. And again, you know, in the forest strategy we develop over the next number of months, we'll have to make sure that we're planting new forests, you know, that aren't creating legacy impacts. And again, we'll have to look at maybe some of the legacy forests we have in our existing estate, you know, that maybe they were on the wrong place, and we have to look at maybe remuneration for some of those areas as well. I suppose the forest strategy, as Nolan alluded to there, those 5 main pillars we have, we would see it's forest for climate, it's forest for wood, forest for people, forest for nature, and forest for the economy. So certainly those 5 pillars are the main 5 strategic themes we have in the next forest strategy. And again, that provides a lot of opportunities for us. And again, you know, we know that forest and climate, you know, forest sequestering carbon, storing carbon. We've over 300 million tons of carbon stored in our forest estate, and also the forest soils. So that's quite important. And again, you know, increased afforestation. I know our afforestation targets are quite are ambitious, and our level of afforestation recently has been quite low. But certainly we have to reverse that trend, and we have to plant more trees to try and increase our potential for carbon neutrality by 2050. So again, you know, appeal to all forest owners there to engage and plant more lands with trees. And again, I know we have issues with licensing that we have to address. And again, I know we have a licensing plan in place at the moment, and we're reversing the trend in our licensing. We're up 60%, I think, on the previous plan, you know, that we have. And certainly, you know, we're improving the whole time, but we know we have to do a lot more to reverse those trends. Again, the importance of timber and wood, we see that playing a big role in our next forest strategy. We have to grow more markets. We're export orientated. We have to try and continue to innovate on timber products. And again, we do a lot of work in the department. So harvested wood products are important for long-term carbon storage. But again, you know, sustainable production of bioenergy, again, very important. Forest for people, again, we have the Quilcher forests, over 400,000 hectares. And again, we have the National Parks and Wildlife Service, lots of great forests there. And I know we know in the public attitude survey that we took place just before Christmas, we had, I think, nearly 58% of people visited a forest in the last 12 months. So really people have, you know, appreciate their local forests, especially in the pandemic when we're all locked up and we couldn't go more than 5K. And again, you know, we do see that a lot of people want to see more forests in their county. In the public attitude survey we took just before Christmas, we had 3 out of 4 people who wanted to see more forests planted, which is positive in relation to the role and value that people place on forests. I say forest for nature, very, very important. And again, you know, we've lots of different types of forests, coniferous forests and broadleaf forests, and they're all contributing to nature and biodiversity, some more than others, depending on the function those forests provide. But certainly lots of scope there to do better, plant more native woodlands, but also to capitalize on the existing forest estate that we have. And again, you know, forests and jobs and timber and economy, vitally important. And again, I suppose a really big challenge for ourselves is, you know, that 4 million cubic meters coming from our private estate, I say it's going to rise to 8 million cubic meters by 2040 and beyond. You know, so really there's a major opportunity for us to really grow the economy and to really capitalize on all those initiatives that come out of Europe over the last 12-18 months and the Green Deal. So really important there. That's probably all I'll say for the moment. Quite a snapshot, whistle-stop tour of where we are. So really be interested to hear your views over the next time or so. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much for that, Fergus. So if anyone, I see some questions coming in there, so if you want to put your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll be able to put them to Fergus. Fergus, very interesting presentation, and it's also quite apparent as we look at it, both the consultation that you're running at the moment, and when we look at the forecast going out to 2040. We've had quite a change in Ireland in terms of forestry as being a resource. I mean, when you look at the figures going back to, was it the 1950s, it's quite shocking the fact that the low level of forestry we had then. It looks to be around 1.7 or 1.8%. and to go from there to we're at 11% now. So it's been a dramatic change in the Irish landscape, and a positive one to have. We look at our European counterparts up at 40% and higher. I think, I don't know, you might know the European average on that, but I think it's in around 40%. So we've a long way to go yet, but yet there's been huge progress over that period of time. As a society, we haven't had that forestry in the background. Like I've visited forestry areas in Austria and Finland and around the continent, as you would have yourself, and there's a local knowledge, there's a grower knowledge in how to manage forestry correctly. And they usually are in multi-cycle forests. They have, you know, there's long traditions of working with forestry. Like here in Ireland, you can talk to anybody about in rural areas of cattle or milking, they'll know all the varies, even if they're not working on it themselves, they'll know what's involved. So have we a challenge there in getting society to understand what forestry, what's involved? A good challenge, but is that something we need to address as well?
Yeah, absolutely, Nolan. I think, I say that wood culture, I mean, certainly, the last number of years, when you really see that the level of knowledge that has really grown dramatically in those 23,000 forest owners that have planted. So certainly, you'll see a lot of farmers and Teagasc and knowledge transfer groups and yourselves as well raising awareness of the benefits of trees. So we're getting a lot of really kind of massive increase in knowledge, and forestry producer groups as well, really to the fore in trying to I suppose, increase the level of awareness of trees in the landscape. But I think you're right, regarding, I suppose, members of the public, and one thing we've come across in the public attitude survey is that, in some cases, we haven't seen that connection between timber and wood and forests, that you'd see in other European countries, in Austria and Finland, which have got a very strong sort of wood culture. And I think that's where we probably need to target our communication piece in our next forest strategy, is to get all the people involved to try and really sell the benefits of using timber and wood, to try and look at sustainable use of timber. And again, one thing in the public attitude survey came out as well was that even on the burning of wood, it came out that some people view that it was kind of environmentally sensitive to burn wood. So again, there's probably a messaging piece there that we just need to get across that burning wood from sustainable sources obviously has to be sustainable from sustainably managed forests, but burning it at low moisture contents in eco design directive compliant stoves is important. But certainly, I think as well, the children that we have as well, the young people in schools, you have the green flag initiatives, there's lots of things we can do to try and encourage and increase awareness of our trees and our landscape. And I think that's important. And I think the public consultation exercise we're doing, I say we've got nearly 3,000 responses. So I'm really looking forward to delving into what those responses are. And I think working with yourselves and others, when we develop the forest strategy, what's going to happen is we're going to have a detailed forest strategy implementation plan. And what I'd like to see is that lots of organizations, including IrBEA, Teagasc, Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, all the lead departments taking a lead role in trying to promote forestry in a positive light, but also recognizes where we've got, legacy issues, that we have to recognize those as well, and we have to ensure that, the forest we put in the landscape isn't going to cause environmental damage. So we have to really put the best science out there as well, and a lot of research is taking place in the department with other organizations as well, that we really do need to try and make sure that we get that message correct.
Gotcha. So, and that is, I suppose, something that you are addressing through the consultation that's going on as well. I suppose, look, I've gone through it over the last couple of days myself. We've been filling it out as an organisation, but it would definitely encourage everyone to go through it. And it's quite a comprehensive piece. You have looked at the 5 pillars: climate, wood, people, nature, and economy. So it's that multifaceted role that forestry plays within a society that I suppose we're trying to get our heads around as a society that hasn't had the history of forestry that other countries have the advantage of. A couple of questions have come in there, so I'll just start running through those. So the first one is from Derek. There's a call for afforestation rates of up to 20,000 hectares per annum from the likes of the Climate Council to meet climate targets. Now, assuming the current licensing issues are sorted out on short-term issue, is that afforestation rate realistic? So that 20,000 hectares per annum, is that likely, or is it realistic or likely to be achieved in the medium term?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big challenge, and certainly there's lots of I suppose targets being floating around. And I mean, I mean, you're looking at about 18% forest cover was the target we had back in '96. And if you look at where we are at the moment, yeah, we'd have to plant, you know, anywhere between 17 and 18, 19,000 hectares, like to get to that level by 2050. So yeah, I mean, it's a challenge, 500,000 hectares to be planted between now and 2050. That's a big challenge, you know, looking at the land use piece we have at the moment. You know, we're only planting 2,000 hectares of forest, which is quite low. And again, it is a challenge. We have lots of competing agricultural, I suppose, land uses there. Farmers like to farm. That's just the honest answer, you know. But we know from our climate change targets to try and get to any sense of carbon neutrality, we have to really significantly ramp up our afforestation levels from the current level we're at the moment. Is it realistic? We hope that it's a challenge there. I know our next forestry programme, and I know carbon budgets are being discussed at the moment, but certainly there's a willingness in government to try and see, can we do everything possible to try and raise the bar in relation to afforestation levels. Obviously, licensing is a big issue. You know, if we don't start out licensing to try and increase it to the levels that we need to increase it, we won't even realise the forecast, never mind increasing our afforestation levels. So yeah, I mean, the figures of 20,000 hectares, you know, I mean, we've got a target in the climate action plan, which is 8,000 hectares. And again, you know, as working in forestry, of course, I'd like to see us getting more than 8,000 hectares as much as possible. It is a challenge. And again, I think that's where we have to work with all the agencies out there, you know, whether it's Quilcha, whether it's the Land IFA, whether it's the landowners themselves. Is there anything we can do to try and encourage farmers to basically transition out of some aspects of agriculture and plant more trees? It's a challenge.
And going by that, obviously, we're looking at, I don't know, Quilcha have made their recent announcement there as well, but there's a mix, obviously, of both private and public land to go into this space. So I suppose you would see that, you share that vision that it's, again, to continue to mix.
Yeah, I think the mix has to be. I mean, Quilcha evolved in public planting a long time ago, and they planted a lot of lands. But I think it's a mix. And again, you know, I think Quilcha have been quite, vocal that, you know, they're not trying to displace, others from the market whatsoever. I think respectful is the word they're using, that they would get involved in trying to facilitate the government in achieving their targets. So I think it's a collaborative approach between private and public. And again, there's a lot of people out there with land which are considering planting their lands. So certainly there's scope there to look at that more. But certainly I think it's a joint effort. All agencies have to pull together. And I think in our forest strategy, you know, I think we'll make a strong play on that, is that other agencies have to come to the table. It can't be just the Department of Agriculture on its own.
Yes, and that comes back into parks and wildlife and everything else. We see, like, obviously forestry for people, and it's obviously will be a big part of people's attachment to forestry now. It's been very useful for Irish society over the last couple of years. So we're probably going to see a bit more of a push for urban type or close to urban forests as well, as which won't really increase the percentage hugely, but it will be it will have a huge impact societally that way.
Yeah.
Now another question just in there is, now the next one is actually a bit more probably towards ourselves as an organisation. That's on the relationship between the WFQA and the FSC and PFC. Look, very quick one on that. The FSC and PFC are assurance schemes in terms of sustainable supply. The WFQA covers sustainable supply as well, but also the quality of the fuel going into an appliance. So it's the moisture contents that would be the primary thing on that, but it's to make sure as a fuel it passes the right tests and it will combust correctly. Why no serious support and advice for domestic and small scale biomass boiler systems?
Yeah, obviously we're not involved in I suppose grant aiding boilers. I suppose the SCAI is the authority that's been charged with that, and all we can say is that from a DAFM point perspective, you know, our job here is to try and encourage people to plant trees, to try and encourage mobilisation of the resource. So we've got very generous grant aid for road construction, so we're paying significant funding for road construction every year. And again, you know, that's our plan, is to encourage.
And your side is more the supply side of it rather than the usage itself.
Yeah, certainly the supply side. Certainly, I mean, our grant rates for roads are 40 euros a linear metre for roads, up to 25 metres per hectare. So again, you know, there's grant aid available. There's lots of money available. But I would say any forest owners.
But then again, and similar to our European counterparts, you would encourage, look, there's multiple uses for wood, both as a sustainable building material, but also as a fuel. And you would see overall in that context, you would see it as a positive, I would assume.
Absolutely. I think I know people say about burning, wood for biomass, but I mean, in reality is that in a lot of locations, like there aren't particular markets available for small diameter material. So biomass boilers is essential. And again, what I'd say is go back into the forecast tool. We've got a lot of information there. You can see the forecast that's available around biomass installation. So we're providing the supports, we're providing the material. And again, say, Department of Communications Climate Action with the SCAI, they're involved in obviously, the SSRH scheme, but certainly we're supportive of biomass burning wood. Certainly we're not against that at all in any shape or form.
Just another question there. Somebody they've been on the Coford website, couldn't find the forecast on it. So is it possible to get a link? But we will send out links on that, and obviously the presentation. And there's a number of links there on that calculation tool there, Fergus, as well. We'll send it out to attendees.
I checked this morning. It's actually on there this morning. So just obviously problems in finding the location. Probably I'll send out a link to you afterwards.
Okay, perfect. What would be your view on short rotation crop willow in the overall scheme? And I suppose in energy crops in general, I notice a forestry for fibre program there as well.
Yeah. I suppose, I mean, our main focus has been not on willow. We did have a willow scheme way back in the department some time ago, which we had fairly poor uptake on it, and the scheme was closed. As regards willow, don't particularly see a massive role for willow in the Department of Agriculture. We do seem to try and support maybe the growing of forest crops, and thinnings from forest crops is probably the way we would go. The problem we have with some of our sites is really quite good ground to grow willow, and again the returns were quite marginal in some regards. So long term we don't see ourselves providing grant aid for willow. Mainly we'll concentrate on our forestry crops.
And that'll be, I think the previous scheme wouldn't have been necessarily within the forestry sector either, in terms of willow usage. I think there was more of an energy basis material for a shorter rotation piece. You do have obviously you support the forestry for fibre is an aspect.
Yeah, we do support the forestry for fibre. We have eucalyptus, again, very, very little uptake of that particular scheme measure. We probably got less than 10, 15 hectares planted as part of that particular measure. So again, it's something we did try to promote to try and help smooth out some of the forecasts, because we had a bit of a dip in the forecast, and the growing crops for fibre would obviously allow us to harvest a lot earlier. So we have a scheme that's there, it's still open, but again, very, very little uptake in that particular measure. So again, we probably see our focus being on, let's try and mobilise our forest thinnings from our existing forest estate. That we would see is probably the long-term view.
And see that is the key source for most of the material.
Yeah.
In terms of, was that quite interesting in the tool you put up there for management? And it's again coming back to the knowledge base that we have here, both in private owners. I suppose Quilcha would have the advantage in having permanent staff involved in managing the forests, but for the private owner, that tool you've created there, there's some quite useful. People tend to own a forest, and it's a major decision to thin, it's a major decision to cut. So that is something, again, in bringing up the knowledge base. Have you found much activity on that so far? Is that something?
There's been a bit of activity, but to be honest, it's good to get the opportunity here today to actually just put it out there, because we would like to see more and more people using it. I know the IFA are very vocal in saying that, if a forest owner's got a forest, you only clear fell it once, you got once to make a mistake or to do it right. So you really need to get as much information as possible. And like what we have seen in the forecast from the surveys that were done in generating the last forecast, at the average clear fell age is about 27, which it's a bit young. We probably would like to see a bit longer. Obviously, it's probably better for carbon storage as well, the longer you grow your forest crop on. But certainly if people are at the right age and they can afford to wait for a few years, you see that tool will show you that your internal rate of return and your financial return will increase quite dramatically every number of years you leave that forest go past.
And they're not itching to get in there as quickly as possible. Maybe just a little bit of patience in terms of forestry.
Financial pressures obviously come to bear on that, you know. But I mean, like, the tool is there, and again, there's a lot of information. There's some price size curves included in the tool as well. It is indicative, you know, and it also depends on your location. But again, it's a good yardstick just to give you that information that you make a decision on whether you fell it today or whether you can afford to wait for a few years' time. But also, I would say is, you know, get your felling license in early, you know, because it does take a while for it to come out. So if you're thinking of felling in 5 years' time, why not put your felling license in now early, and you should have it then when it's time for felling.
Yeah. Another question in there in terms of, with research done on Scots pine, in terms of its use as a native conifer tree. I know, I think the rate you're looking at in Sitka was about 44%, which is actually, many people would nearly perceive it to be 90, whereas it's interesting to see it as a 44, or some people would say it's a lot higher. So the actual figure being 44 is quite interesting to see. But in terms of species such as Scots pine, is that something that you would see something to promote more in the future?
Yeah, I mean, Scots pine is obviously one of it's our only kind of native, I suppose, commercial tree species. So certainly, you know, on more hungrier soils and free draining soils, Scots pine has a role. And certainly in our native woodland schemes, you know, Scots pine is a component as well of those native woodland species we plant. So, you know, Scots pine does have a role to play. You know, it's a very good construction timber as well. And again, you know, we want to see more species being planted you know, across our estate, but commercial species as well. So Douglas fir, Scots pine, you know, even things like western red cedar. Talk about climate change adaptation, you know, we need to see a lot more species being planted across our estate than we currently have. But Scots pine, yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic looking tree as well, visually, and from a landscape perspective. I think it has so much to offer, really, and I think, yeah, we'd like to see a lot more being planted.
Okay, thank you. We're running short on time there. I do want to bring Teresa back in, because I know there was a technical issue there earlier on. But in terms of just to finish off there on the consultation, just so everyone is aware of, that's online at the moment. It's open until 12 o'clock tonight, and you're looking for everyone's views in terms of future vision for forestry. I know I've gone through it myself. You've laid out a lot of, it's quite quick to go through. If someone wants to go through quite fast, they can, or if you can go into a lot more detail. So you've given options there for people to type in the essays they want to, if needs be. But essentially, the polling tool on it it's all a lot of tick box questions, so it can be gone through quite fast.
Yeah, and certainly once the consultation finishes, we will do a report of the consultation exercise. So you get a breakdown of the individual type of categories of people and how they've commented on relation to the forestry vision. So certainly, yeah, I encourage you all to engage with it. I say it is open till 12 o'clock midnight. So if you want to go and engage, please do so.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that, Fergus. Teresa, just bring it back in there. Thanks very much for rejoining us in terms of the WFQA. Now, you'd shown the animation. I don't think we got a chance to discuss it afterwards. Just in terms of that's going to be available on social media, I assume, over the course of the day. We're going to be pushing that out.
Yeah, so I'll be circulating it. We'll put it up on the website, the IrBEA website, and it will be on the YouTube channel and also, you know, across the social platforms. So I'd encourage everyone participating, if they come across it, to share it with them, because, you know, the more people that see it, the more positives we have for forestry, you know, that it's good for everybody, not just for industry, but for recreational purposes, all the above the 5 pillars, as Fergus was mentioning earlier. So yeah, please share.
Thank you very much for that. Teresa, Fergus, thank you very much and everyone for joining us there today. So we'll be back in 2 weeks' time with our next topic. Again, as stated earlier, if there is any topics you would like us to see cover within the webinar series, feel free to contact myself or Teresa or Sean or any of our staff, and we'll be able to consider that for going forward. So after that, thanks very much again, Fergus and Teresa and everyone, and we'll talk again.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Bye now.
Bye.